Welcome to another installment of Modic's Network Voices. I'm Ivan Rupnik, and today we're going to continue our deep dive into the Swedish offsite ecology with another guest, Sandra Frank. Sandra, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm very happy to be here. Hi, Ivan. I'm Sandra Frank, and I'm the marketing director of ARVET. And we only build, or we develop houses out of timber, wood. We built our first house in 2013, just outside Stockholm. And it's an 8-story housing building. And what we didn't realize is actually that house has taken us around the globe and has taken the globe to us.
And has brought people to you, like myself.
I know. We've had visitors from 150 different countries, which is just nothing that we could even think of.
Yeah, so we'd love to know more about ARVET and your story. Please feel free to share your screen and tell us a little more about this background.
Yeah. So we're talking about the building industry and building in our only renewable building material, which comes from the forests. And we're kind of saying that we need to grow our cities. In Sweden, we had new legislations about 100 years ago when we had deforestation here. And the government said that for each tree you take down, you have to plant a new one. So today we have more than double the amount of forest than we had 100 years ago. And it's also growing by 15% every year. So that is really a resource we can see that we need to use. Here's the first house that we built in 2013. It's just outside Stockholm, and it's an 8-story apartment building, all timber. Everything above the ground is CLT, and it's actually prefabricated up to 80% up north in Sweden. So where we realize there's lots of space, there's lots of labor, people need jobs, and also the forest is there. And in the cities down here, especially in Stockholm, and here you can see it's a little bit in the outskirts, so it's not that tight, but also mounting this house took us 7 months. So it was actually 7 months from we first put up the first wall until the people moved in. Mm-hmm. And here you can see how they all came in blocks, in panels. So with the facade on it, the CLT, the insulation, the gypsum on the inside, and actually here in the picture you see really big sliding windows. That was something we changed until the next house because we realized they were too heavy to prefabricate. So we actually, in the next house, we had a little bit smaller windows. Still, they were really big, but so that we could put them in at the factory and just mount them on site. And here you can see the layers on the inside, and here's also a slab coming down with all the pipings, the electricity, and everything is in that slab. And which also means I will stay here, but while the building was coming up, our carpenters could go down on the lower floors and put up the kitchens and the nicer floors and do everything. So this is the first house. In the second house, we did some justifications, and because that from what we learned with the first house, so the second house was actually more than 80% prefabricated off-site, which was fantastic. And the city of Sundbyberg, where we built this, they were so happy because normally it takes about like 21 to 24 months to build a concrete, steel and concrete house, which also means that the city is very affected during that period of time. And this was 1/3 of the time. So in 7 months, there was disturbance in the traffic around and so, but instead of like 23 months, that was something that made the city really happy. And also for us as developers, and at the time we were even contractors building these houses, and which made that we didn't have to pay as much fees to the city, because we took space and cut off the roads and so during the construction time, but also getting back the investment in 7 months instead of 23 months. And another thing is also that things in the city, I guess it's the same thing all around the world. We have more of educated administrative people, and more of the carpenters and the construction workers kind of off-site as well on the countryside. So we've had a lack of construction workers in Stockholm the last couple of years. And that was also good. So we needed people for 7 months instead of 23. And actually we could build 3 houses with the same labor force, the same, what is that called in English? The establishment where you have all the offices and where people change.
You mean the site, the kind of site coordination? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Right, and all the cranes and everything that's
logistics,
which is really a big cost in a construction site like this.
Mm-hmm.
So here's from the inside, and I love the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually because we're here in Stockholm, and it snows and rains in the winter. So we actually it's wood and timber everywhere in the house, except for here in the entrance where we put stone. And that's a little bit because of the weather to save it more. And here's a little bit an interior from one of the apartments. And where we were a little bit, what do you say?
Cautious about the wood? Yeah, I remember.
So we were a little bit, can we really sell like 64 apartments, all timber, like a sauna a little bit? So there's gypsum here, and that's also because this was our first house and we didn't want to take any risks at all in getting thinking about the fire regulations and everything. So we just we did both the gypsum thing and also had a sprinkler system. So we kind of did, there is extra of kind of, not everything, but there is extra on top of things.
Redundancy, a little bit of redundancy to make sure, since you're piloting this,
We could see that this was the first house built in the Stockholm area and in Sweden, and we could kind of thought really from the beginning that we would get some attention, especially if something went wrong. But the attention we got, we could never even imagine. But that's why I was kind of saying that when you cut through the walls, or like you can see here in the windows, we wanted to show that it is wood inside, in between here. So that's why. And here's a picture from the balcony. Those are really lovely apartments, I think.
Yeah.
And here's also when we still had a showroom. And but what we realize is that we still learn new things about these houses every day, or not every day, but kind of every other week. because now there's new reports in the energy consumption, and you know, we can read a lot of things about the houses, how they work in reality with people living in them, and so on. But what we have realized since we did this, we did it because of environmental reasons, but we didn't realize how fantastic it is. So one thing that is really a problem, for a global problem for us now, is that we need to bind all the carbon dioxide that we have let out already in the atmosphere. And it will not, like, if you look at all these UN reports that comes, it will not be enough to lower the emissions. So, because we need to bind them somewhere. And to build our future cities out of wood instead of concrete and steel is a fantastic way, because they bind the, like this picture saying that this house is a carbon sink, actually standing there. So it's also, while the forest is growing, it binds carbon dioxide in the trees while it's growing. But when it's not growing anymore, they will start letting it out slowly again. So what we need to do is also to use the forest. So when they are fully grown, to take them down, replant, and then the circle will start all over again. So, and also we kind of, this house on the picture here, it contains about 2,000 cubic meters of wood. And it actually takes the Swedish forest, it says 1 single minute here, but it is 44 seconds. It's easier to remember 1 single minute, but it takes 1 minute to grow a house like that. And all other building materials that we use are fossil, which means that they will never grow back again. So for all the next generations, we need to be aware of this and really use concrete, for example, on the foundations where we really need it, because we will need it in the future as well. But while building above the ground, we might as well use timber. And some of these bad pictures as well, but it's something that can wake us up, and which means also that this is really a part where we can do something quickly about our climate. Because the building industry is responsible for 39% of all the carbon dioxide emissions. And that includes, here is the circular diagram from IPCC, and it's everything in it. But what I think is really interesting here is that only to produce the cement, where we need sand to mix to concrete, but only to produce the cement is letting out more than double the amount than the flight industry. And I mean, the flight industry is really working hard on their issue, which is good, but we in the building industry needs to wake up and see that we can really do something quick and good about this. There's also, here's a picture about, it's a limestone quarry in Sweden, and then a forest. It's just to kind of point out on the nose on everybody that we are using not renewable building materials. We are using materials, and it's easy not to think about it because we are so used to it. But also, if we start to replant our forests, we have quite some, like where we live in Sweden, in up north here, and in the Northern America and Canada, you have a lot of forests as well. But there's a lot of places on the earth where people have taken down the forest and not replanted, and that's also something that we need to talk about. Yeah. And since we did this and learned so much, we realized there is a lack of knowledge, because of course we have built like the last 180 to 100 years in steel and concrete and glass and everything that's looked modern. And of course there's knowledge that is forgotten. So we thought that this was so important, and then we kind of was like this, who is very important to, who is a change maker? And so we actually did, we went to the Biennale of Architecture in Venice, which is every second year, where all the architects from the whole world comes together and look at things and get inspirations. And so we built the first year in 2016, we built a CLT pavilion in one of the gardens, very central, just outside the whole Biennale area. And then we went back the next time, so 2018, and this is a glulam pavilion that year. And it was so much fun because it was really popular. You see the garden here, it was all full and packed of people, and we had, here's a close-up with the CLT pavilion, and here's one with the glulam one, but also had lots of seminars and talks, and we invited people. There's always, here's a picture of he's the General Secretary of FAO, which is the UN Forest and Agriculture, talking about the global goals and our agenda. So there's been so many different activities in this park here, and with various, all total different panels and talks. And but the funny thing is that after Venice, we were thinking, okay, now we've been here twice, and that's been really good, but how can we go to the next level? And then we realized that UN Habitat, which is responsible for all the kind of housing situation around the globe, they were having their first assembly in Nairobi, 2019, so last May. And we actually sent, can you see on the picture, it's the same pavilion that was in Venice. So we sent it on a boat down there, and but it kind of got stuck on the ocean. So 2 weeks before this big convention with all these
important people,
we kind of said, what's plan B? So we did a simpler version and built it out of African cedar, and you see the pavilion in the middle. So that was actually on the UN compound, one of the talks we had there. And then now the glulam pavilion came eventually, like a week late. And now it's standing at the Swedish residency, and we gave it to them as a gift and said, use it just to talk about sustainability, renewable material, and the forest, and use it as an inspiration. And it was quite fun because then we had 2 pavilions in Africa. So with help from UN Youth, we gave the pavilion that was on the UN compound to one of the slum areas called Matare. And that was really, that was something to see, I would say, growing up in a very safe country, but also in a city, because it is a city, but there was no streets, it was all damp on the ground. So this is actually the only place in this whole city where there is both a floor and a roof to protect.
It's publicly accessible.
Yeah. And it was packed with, especially children from the first day, with it's like recording TikTok like dances and so. But yeah, and then this was really fun. We got a phone call from the royal court in Sweden, and they said, "Well, hello. We would like to tell you that the king is very interested in what you've done. So, is it possible for him to come for a visit?" So he did in January. Soon it's 2 years ago, and he also brought the president of Iceland, who's there on the picture. So it was a great visit. Which is really good because the king of Sweden, he's so interested in the forest and kind of loves it, but also in all the products that could help us to a green economy. And since that is really something that Sweden wants to promote, that was really good. They also actually called us back a month later or so and said, like, yeah, the king liked the visit very much. Now he would love to see the industry that we were talking about up north. So we also arranged a trip to the north of Sweden and some study visits, which was a lot of fun. Now I'm gonna back here. Yeah. Just a little bit like what we're doing now and in the future. We've came across a fantastic project in Nairobi. It's actually a student city that is going to be built just a little bit north of Nairobi, where they have lots of university. One university is with 70,000 students, but a lack of student homes or places for the students to stay, so they travel long trips. And so there is this plan for a city for 20,000 students. I would love to come back to you next year and talk more about this, because we're right in this period where we're to writing all the things in how the city plan is about to come and so. And there's also space for a CLT factory, which would be the first in the African continent. Wow. But I think that's fantastic. But it's also, especially now, in a way, like post-COVID, as we thought it was in the summer, but to restart, especially in a continent which hasn't gone through the industrialization and all the thing that we have gone through, so they can also jump up, skip all the parts that we have tried out and didn't work out so good in the end, but also to put on a circular economy and a green economy and so. And we can't really stop doing these pavilions because we think it's fantastic and so much fun. But since we got so good contact with you and Habitat in Nairobi, they offered us a space in the north of Kenya called Kalobey, which is a place where I think it's actually the largest refugee camp in the world. And they also need space for the people to get together, sit down, and there is lots of communities there. There's also lots of women, because the men are many times stuck in the war, and so it's the women that are leading these different communities many times, and also for them to sit down and have So we asked one of our friends, Petra Gipp, which is a fantastic Swedish architect, to design a community hall, and in here you can see it, and we're actually going down in May. That's the plan, and I really hope that we could do it, to mount it, and it's designed to be lifted up by Mancraft so that the people can do it themselves. And then I just have a last slide, and it's just to remind us about our global goals. And what we realize when we've been thinking about all this is that if we start all over like we did in our countries 100 years ago, that we were replanting our forests as soon as we take them down. But if we go down to Africa, for example, and implement this from planting the tree till building the cities, we tick in all the 17 goals, which I think is fantastic.
Great, Sandra. Maybe unshare your screen, if that's okay. Yeah. Thanks for the very deep dive into ARVET. I wanted to start maybe a conversation around a story you told me when I had a chance to visit the project in Stockholm, which I think is a great illustration of the kind of cultural barriers that even in a place like Sweden, which has a strong forestry tradition, has, which is that, and something you alluded to, in that your the 9-story CLT project, you decided that despite of the technical regulations and having all the technical and permitting processes, that you were afraid that the consumer may not be ready to live in a tall wood building. And then the story you told me, which we can discuss, is that what I remember is that you mentioned that some of the owners actually discovered the wood below the gypsum. It's like the pavement below the beach below the pavement, and then started to actually remove it, which encouraged you even more to believe in this. So can you talk a little bit about the kind of cultural barriers, even in Sweden, which we from outside is seen as a very wood-friendly place? What were the kind of cultural barriers that you faced in even a place like Sweden doing this kind of wood-based work with these taller wood buildings?
Yeah, many.
Yeah.
But mainly, I would say by officials, politicians, and that's also when we realize that there is a lack of knowledge, and also when you're used to do one thing in a special way, it's very easy to do it again. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we also, all these pavilions and all, we've done a lot of things that, because we realize we need to spread this word. Mm-hmm. And also convince people, or not convince them, but tell them stories so that they realize that this is for real. Mm-hmm. But also looking at the people that were buying the apartments, mm-hmm. that was one thing that we thought, like, we were really happy because they were sold out. And but it is also in a very nice place that they built right by the water. And then we invited the people to the construction site to see when their apartment was coming up. And then people were coming and they pulled me and said, like, Sandra, this is wood. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, we told you so. Mm-hmm. But it's all wood. And it says something about just the picture that everybody has of a new built apartment building, how it looks. Even that was the thing that we had been talking so much and telling and tried to show them pictures, but they still couldn't believe it. So it wasn't when they saw it and they were standing on the floors and kind of touching the floors, and they was like, this is all wood. And so it says something about our inner pictures.
Yeah. And I think it also,
yeah. And also how important these, buildings like this is. So to show people, like a showcase, actually.
Because it seems that even in the 21st century with virtual reality and photorealistic renderings, actually living and breathing and feeling something actually has a big impact on biases that are often image-based, but that we take for granted as if we've experienced them, which is, it seems like it's another one of the problems of it, like a late industrial society. So it's interesting too, because you described, I remember there are 4 buildings in this development, right? And so maybe you can talk about that as well, which is this idea of almost kind of the kind of continual improvement that is typical to manufacturing. Is something that we saw when we saw the projects you described. I remember you very clearly described, which again is a kind of manufacturing approach, but you as a developer working with people, not with machines, applied a similar approach where each project the labor, the delivery, but also the client response, these cultural biases, you almost bought yourself some time to be able to iterate in a way. So each building informed the next.
Yeah, you could really see the difference between the customers in the first house and already in the second one. That in the second one, it was more younger people. Still, this apartment was quite expensive. They came from the city center, where younger people, they kind of tend to stay in the city center longer. And so it was older people in the first house, it was younger people in the second one, but they came to us because they realized that this was a timber building, and they were very conscious people. I would say something like that, because they wanted, in a way, I think, to make a statement in many ways, in different ways, I think, but here in Sweden, especially, it's the younger generation that are more conscious about the environmental issues, and kind of wants to be a part of the solution, not like the old world and the problems, and want to be a part of that. But also, since the first house got a lot of attention because of the architecture, that it's a very clean house. In a way, it's the house. Yeah, so that we could see a big difference already there.
Yeah, and these units were sold, right? They're not rental units. These are condominiums.
Yeah.
And I know you worked with, you mentioned the fabricator, correct me if I'm wrong, is Martinsons in the north of Sweden for the CLT panels. And so you also described it, but then ARVET had the sort of contractors, the assembly with it. Can you describe a little bit of what's inside of ARVET, and what kind of services you're a developer, but also a general contractor as well, or at least in some projects?
Yeah. No, we used to be both a developer and a general contractor, and we're not anymore. So we have ARVET, or before our name was Folkham, but we sold the brand, and but it's a company that's been from the 1968. So we built a lot, but doing this first CLT house, we had already taken this decision, but we realized that this is a whole new world for us. And also going around and talk about it changed our way of being a company. But also we got a lot of, for quite some years, we got a lot of offers, and they say, ARVET, can you come here and build and everything? And we said, it's like, no, we can't take our construction workers and go, to Kenya, for example, and build a city there. But then it was in a way in two steps. So 4 years ago, we cut off the contractor side, and we just kind of became developers, or
focused on.
And then we cut off. So now we're only developers, but also it took us kind of these years to mentally change, to realize that if we just developers, we can develop anywhere. We don't need to, and since it's so easy to build a CLT building, it's like a piece of Lego, and everything is prefabricated perfectly. It's on the millimeter. It's cut off out of a robot, and it's on the millimeter. We have never built anything that's been so precise, and also the quality in the end. So that's another thing that we're working with now, looking at, because normally there's always things that you need to make adjustments afterwards, and there's a lot of costs including that. But in these houses, they are fantastic, but the quality is something very special. And so that's why, so today we are only developers, but we have widened our minds. So now we go anywhere because it's idea and knowledge. So that's really easy to do anywhere actually. And then just get contractors locally.
But it sounds like having those contractors in that project in Stockholm seems to have been an important part of you not having to have contractors, in the sense that that project was kind of an experimental ground for you, but really the financing, the team, and even the sort of sales and the kind of contacts with the client were really developed. I mean, that's something we've noticed. That's a big obstacle in the U.S. In the U.S., wood construction is maybe even more accepted because unfortunately people don't care about what things are made of as long as the cost is comparable. But the idea of setting up a process to learn, it seems like it's an important step in any new market, any new typology, or any new technology. And it sounds like that for you was the kind of big learning curve that in a way you were able to develop. How are you able to, I mean, this is very exciting work in Africa. Are you operating as a developer or as a consultant in that process? And then would the CLT plant be importing wood from Sweden, or would there be also forestation project? Obviously that would take a long time, so.
Wow, yeah, now you're into something, because that has grown, that it's really that. So we are both kind of really consultants and developers and everything, it feels like sometimes, because that has included so much work and also so much engagement since there is Nairobi is a place where the UN have one of their headquarters. Of course, we just realized we need to fill these people at the UN with knowledge, because like you were saying, that was the same situation in Sweden. People don't care about the material as long as they don't know that there is a difference and that things makes a big difference. So in that way, I think Strandparken has really been a game changer, standing there as a showcase, and also giving all these journalists from around the world coming and to get them interested also in the climate issue and see how is the construction industry today. Is it possible to change it? Yes, it's possible to do something really, really good. But it was really important for us to be both the developer and the contractor, like you were saying, because in that case, we know all the costs and all the benefits. And it's not like the contract is keeping that from us.
Or the manufacturer,
or the manufacturer.
Yeah, or an inspector, which is saying you can't do something because they've never seen it done.
Yeah. So, but especially because in the first years, we always said that these houses were, or the first house at least, were 15% more expensive, because we thought so. Because the beams and everything, the skeleton of the house was 50% more expensive. And then we realized when we were looking at it afterwards, and it's like, okay, but this is just the cost. If we look at the whole investment, it's so much more cheaper, because we can use our labor force like 3 times, like I was saying, and we can use so many things, and we can also use our own money 3 times instead of
more units on the market, so more faster return on investment, even that alone, right? Yeah.
So it's a lot of things that even we didn't think of it in the beginning, because we were thinking in how a developer is thinking and how a contractor is thinking traditionally, and that is something that I'm convinced it will totally change in the coming years.
And that's been the biggest obstacle, at least in the US, is that the entire procurement process is honestly built on a certain mentality and a comfort level of developers with how they like to work. It's not necessarily more efficient. It is believed to be more efficient. And it's something that manufacturing alone, technology alone, even architects and design alone haven't been able to do. And really it's something that this kind of learning process you're describing as a developer seems to be one of the key differences that we've also seen in other contexts that really moves the industry forward. That, as well as having an open conversation with people about their needs, which seems like something you guys are doing too. Actually, I also wanted to ask, you've done a lot of this promotional work in places that that also need help, but the US and Canada also need help, and we're wondering, would you be interested in coming and telling your story to a US audience, but also bringing some of this physical material to the US for dialogue?
Of course. And now you have I know that there was actually a very good initiation a couple of years ago, and the administration came to Sweden to look at Växjö, the city of Växjö, for example, where they had timber buildings, and also to promote that they could see that in the States you have big areas, industrial areas, like by your lakes, where there is forest. There is a lot of educated people that is used to working in the industries, because the car industry kind of gone down. So they wanted to fill that up with the new and
green industry.
A green industry. And I'm really hoping that initiation will come back. And
with the new administration.
Exactly. But anyhow, I'm sure that with any administration, this is the new economy.
Yeah.
So it will just go quicker or not so quick. That's my conviction. But we were actually contacted by a landowner from New York City a while ago, but this was post-COVID, or not post,
pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID. And really interested. It's so that would be fantastic to see if we could do something with him in New York. But what I can see, or what I've heard, is also that it's different in different states with the regulations and so on. But I'm sure that it won't take that long until the regulations, like, people are fine, because now it was another story maybe 10 or 20 years ago, but now there's so many houses, there's so much research done, there's so many showcases, but you really need one in your side in the States as well.
Right. Well, we also need to, and seeing it from a developer, even a very enlightened developer perspective, is really useful as a way to overcome the remaining barriers to really making a change to this way of delivering housing, which is really needed. Sandra, I really appreciate your time, and really hope that we can have you back on Modex Voices. And we're also hoping to visit Sweden with some of our network next summer. Hopefully things will be different. And again, I think there would be opportunities to bring you to the States as well and talk about your experience. So until next time.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you.